今天的视频是由 Bitmine 主席汤姆利针对2026年5月的市场展望所做的演讲。汤姆说，如果以太币5月份也收涨的话，那么这就预示着本轮的加密寒冬就已经结束了。因为根据以往的经验，从来没有一个熊市里面以太币可以连涨3个月。按照以往的周期推算的话，目前这个时间点也已经处于熊市底部区间了。所以他们这么说也有道理。还需要注意的是，现在以太币和美股的软件类公司有高度的正相关性，科技股涨，以太币也涨。而且有一个数据显示，自从美国和以色列打击伊朗以来，以太币的表现比绝大多数的传统资产更强劲，比如黄金，甚至呢还高于比特币。这也打破了市场对于加密货币仅仅是高风险资产的一个刻板印象，证明了它在极端的情况下具有抗风险的特性。这一点呢，倒是让人感觉有一点意外啊，因为到目前为止呢，市场普遍还是会觉得以太币的表现比较的差啊，不尽如人意。不过呢，其实这样的例子啊也并不在少数。最近这些年呢，加密货币凭借着它超强的流动性和可转移性，成为了比黄金更好的避险资产。汤姆呢也重点提到了 AI 的发展对加密货币的巨大影响，认为 AI 的发展离不开加密货币 ，AI Agent 的支付必须依赖区块链，这是一个必选项，不是可选项。而且未来还存在巨大的高达100万亿美金级别的资产代币化的需求，这就导致未来最大的金融公司有最少一半将是加密原生的公司。那在这样的市场预期下呢，以太坊的潜力当然是不可限量的。所以 Bitmine 将买入并质押以太坊发行总量的5%的以太币。Bitmine 成立仅1年时间，目前就已经完成了4%，在2026年将完成全部5%的目标，这是一个不小的量，而且买入的速度也不慢，以至于汤姆说他们自己都想把这个速度给降下来。那么我们分析了这么多，其实大家都很想要问一个问题，那就是以太到底能涨到什么地方？那在视频中呢，汤姆也很贴心的给出了他的答案。他预测了不同阶段的以太币的价格，最极端的情况下，以太币将达到25万美金一枚。没错，是25万美金一枚。也就是说，在未来，以太币还有巨大的上涨空间。如果以太坊能够实现它世界金融结算层的宏伟目标，或者说实现它世界计算机的这个宏伟目标，那么我觉得25万美金一枚的以太币应该是不难实现的。OK， 看视频。
Hi there, this is Tom Lee. I'm the chairman of Bitmine Immersion Technologies, and this is our chairman's message for the month of May 2026. I want to talk about Crypto Spring and why I believe Ethereum is the future of money. Here are some disclaimers. So let's start with why I believe Crypto Spring is here. I know that many of you believe that we're still in the fog of war, and it is indeed true the US is in the midst of a conflict with Iran. But what you have to focus on is that Ethereum has now risen for 3 months consecutively. And in fact, if Ethereum closes May above 2100, that would be the 3rd consecutive month. As I'm highlighting here, there's never been a crypto winter where Ethereum has closed up 3 consecutive months in a row. In other words, the fact that we're up 3 months in a row means crypto winter is over. Another way to think of this is to look at software stocks and Ethereum. Both have been highly correlated to each other. And as you can see, software stocks have risen along with Ethereum. In fact, at Fundstrat, software is now among our top sector picks as of May 1. So that gets us to some facts that Ethereum is the best performing asset since the start of the Iran war. It's performing as a wartime store of value. And here's the thing. It's been a great diversification tool since 2016. Take a look at this first column that's highlighted. Let's look at different allocations you could have done in terms of owning Ethereum on December 31, 2016, from 0% all the way to 33%. And these are the starting dollar values. So if you had $100,000, for instance, and you put 5% into Ethereum, that was $5,000 invested. This highlighted column is what it would be worth today. So your $5,000 investment would have grown to 1.5 million. In other words, if you compare that to having zero allocated to Ethereum, okay, and you look at your total portfolio today, it's 230,000 if you had no exposure to Ethereum versus 1.7 million if you had 5% allocated to Ethereum. In other words, you had a 7 times increase in your total portfolio with just a 5% exposure to Ethereum. Now, another way to think of this is how much of each asset would you need to own to protect yourself against a 50% decline in the S&P 500? Okay, so this is the required hedge. You would need just 0.4% 10 years ago in Ethereum to protect yourself against basically a wipeout in the stock market. Gold, which is considered a store value, you'd have to add 37% of your portfolio. So you can see the point here. You'd want to own just a small piece of Ethereum as a source of diversification and as a hedge. Now, Ethereum does track Bitcoin, so I think you should look at the price ratio. And the current price ratio is below not only the 8-year average, but the 2021 high at 0.087. And you've seen this chart from us before. If Bitcoin gets to 250,000, which we think is fair value in the next 12 months, and Ethereum gets to the 8-year average of the price ratio, that's 12,000 Ethereum. That's a lot of upside from here. If it gets to the 2021 high, that's 22,000 Ethereum. Keep in mind, those are two numbers to watch. And if ETH becomes the payment rails of the future, which we believe is the case, that would imply $62,000 Ethereum. So clearly a lot of upside from here. And Ethereum is exiting a long consolidation, something I've talked about before. You can see this current consolidation is 5 years. But those other consolidations resulted in pretty explosive upside moves. 227 times after the 2016 consolidation, and after the 2020 consolidation of 54x for Ethereum. So I think this next upside is going to be led by tokenization and agentic AI. So let's talk about the future of money. Now, Elon Musk said something pretty profound recently. He says that this future system won't use dollars as currency, just mass and energy. What he's really referring to is that compute and energy are the two scarce assets. In fact, Larry Fink of BlackRock believes that compute will actually become a new asset class and that we'll be buying futures of compute. Reid Hoffman, the billionaire founder of LinkedIn, said that crypto will become critical in an AI world. Okay, well, let's think about stablecoin transactions, which we had said last year was the ChatGPT moment for crypto. And you can see stablecoin volumes now exceed Visa payments. This is according to data from Bitwise. And Grayscale believes that the tokenized market is going to reach $300 trillion as we tokenize real estate, fixed income equities, derivatives, commercial real estate, basically everything. What does this mean for layer one blockchains? Well, this is Ethereum, which is in pink, and the total value locked of tokenized assets. And you can see Ethereum moves pretty closely with that tokenization, meaning that, according to Grayscale, networks that host a large share of tokenized activities may capture a meaningful portion of economic value. In other words, if Ethereum is the leading tokenization platform, its price will go up a lot. And Mark Andreessen, who's very visionary about the future, says the grand unification of AI and crypto are AI agents because they're going to need money. And we've talked about this before, that there's numerous reasons why blockchains are a better way for AI agents to use money. Okay, well, let's bring this all together. If tokenization is the future of assets and money is becoming digital and AI agents are going to use money, well, we should think about what it means for the most profitable banks in the future. Well, today, JPMorgan is the most profitable bank in the world with 59 billion of net income projected this year, almost 60 billion, and 300,000 employees. But let's mix in two new types of companies, Jane Street, which just is a trading firm, and Tether. Jane Street's on track to make $40 billion this year with 3,000 employees, 1/1000th the number of employees at JPMorgan. In fact, Jane Street in the first quarter this year is reporting about 10 billion in net income. That means moving money, which is what Jane Street does, is starting to capture more value than the entire operations of a global bank. Again, going back to this chart, Jane Street makes more money than Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, Morgan Stanley, and Goldman Sachs. Okay, and then let's look at Tether, which is the largest stablecoin operator in the world. It's going to earn about 15 billion this year with 300 employees. So 1/1000th the number of employees of JPMorgan. These are two new types of financial institutions. Didn't exist 20 years ago. But keep in mind, that's sort of the story, that technology, as it gets introduced to sectors, creates disruption and it reduces the value of incumbency. Now, I'm going to highlight a bunch here. Automobiles. We don't remember any of the horse buggy makers. We only think of the new entrants. with mobile, all these old names really largely don't exist. It's mostly mobile today. In digital media, nobody really remembers names like Hearst, Viacom, News Corp as the giants. They were the giants in their day. Today, it's more Google, Meta, and TikTok. Even more recently, cloud computing. Before cloud computing, there were PC names, IBM, Compaq, Dell, Gateway. They've given away to Amazon, Microsoft Azure, Oracle, Google Cloud. And finally, in EVs, these traditional automakers are still around, but Tesla is far bigger. So markets tend to overestimate the value of incumbency, and it's really the new entrants that capture a lot of that value. Well, what does that mean? I believe in the next 10 years, half of the largest financial institutions in the world are going to be native digital companies, native digital asset companies, many of them in crypto. And finally, let's talk about Bitmine. Bitmine's been building in the crypto winter. The first thing we did was invest in ACO, which is an intersection of AI and identity. It's a publicly traded company, ticker ORBS, and one of their biggest assets is their holdings of WorldCoin. WorldCoin is helping verified humans to prevent networks and systems that we used to be polluted by digital bots. I mean, take a look today. Basically, from everything from Polymarket to web traffic to emails, even to X.com and Reddit, are really starting to see more of the volume come from non-humans. In fact, Reddit wants to consider using Face ID for human verification. ACO owns a stake in OpenAI, WorldChain, and MrBeast. So think of it as very similar to a company called Fundrise, ticker VCX, whereas Fundrise trades at 6 times NAV, ACO is undervalued. The second is Bitmine launched MAVAN, which is the largest single staking operator in the world. We launched commercial service at the end of March of this year. We have more than 14 billion of assets staked, and we're staking about 2 billion of client assets currently, including other tokens, Hyperliquid and Solana and Canton. As you can see, the staking operations are generating quite a lot of rewards for Bitmine. Over 300 million today, but on track to be 352 million once we've fully staked. We also invested into MrBeast. I've talked about that before, but he is the largest content creator in the world, but he also bought Step Financial to turn it into a financial services company. I think for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, he's going to be the Robinhood, SoFi, and Chime combined. And of course, there's a huge wealth transfer coming for Gen Z and Gen Alpha. We uplisted to the NYSE Big Board. That's a pretty big deal. And finally, we reached 4% of the Ethereum total coin supply. Bitmine was created on June 30th of 2025, and the first 1% of the Ethereum supply came in August. And as you can see the different milestones here, on April 10th, we reached 4%. Now we're at this pace, we could reach 5% very quickly, but we actually want to slow the pace of accumulation. But we still expect to reach 5% of Ethereum sometime in 2026. And as far as price goes, keep in mind, we're a digital asset treasury, so we're going to track the price of Ethereum, but we want to outperform Ethereum. For instance, in 2025, Ethereum was up 22%. From June 30th to year end, Bitmine rose 500%, which means it outperformed by 48,000 basis points. So far this year, Ethereum's down 18% and Bitmine's down 15%, so it's outperforming by 310 basis points. But of course, if Ethereum goes up, so should Bitmine's price. The correlation is still around 90%. So recall those price targets we had. 22,000 for Ethereum, 62,000 for payment rail, and of course, 250,000 using both Joe Lubin's price target for Ethereum and Securitize's recent price target for Ethereum. Well, that would value Bitmine's shares at 500 at 22,000, 1,500 at 62,000, and 5,000 per share at 250,000. So you can see quite a lot upside. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.